Welcome to Budgeting Made Easy Video 1. This video is all about setting your priorities and your goals, figuring out your vision so you know where you're going. You can't make a budget if you don't know where you're going. What are you going to budget for? What should you prioritize? Should you be paying off your car loan? Should you be saving for your retirement? Should you be prioritizing an emergency fund? That's what this video is all about, figuring out where you're going so you can get there. Let me first start with this story. This is how I learned how to budget and how to set goals and how to prioritize things. I started out right out of college with tens of thousands of dollars of student loans. And then, of course, like most millennials, like many people, I needed a car. So I went down to a new car dealership and bought a new car for my brand new first job out of college, making a grand total of $32,000 a year. I thought, you know what? I'll treat myself. I'll get a nice new car. Biggest mistake of my life. So I started life out with just under $100,000 worth of debt and a $32,000 a year salary. What to do? How do I do this? And I started budgeting. I realized that if I was going to live, I needed to live on a budget. Now, I didn't just come to that conclusion right off the bat looking at my debt. I came to that conclusion one day when I was working my second job, trying to make ends meet, and an email went around for a book club Bible study. I'm not sure what it was. I don't recall at the time, but what I do recall is it was a potluck. An email went out. There was a sign-up sheet. Somebody took drinks. Another person took, the host was doing the main course. Another person took a salad. Somebody else was bringing chips. And the only thing left, another person dessert, the only thing left to sign up for when I got home from my second job was a fruit salad. Do you know how expensive it is to make a fruit salad? At that point in my life, in my early 20s, making $32,000 a year, barely making ends meet, my student loans had come due, I had a car payment. I only had between $35 and $40 a week to eat. Everything. That was all of my discretionary income to eat. $35 a week. A fruit salad is expensive. I mean, if you're going to make a good fruit salad, you could fill it chock full with apples and oranges and call it a fruit salad, but nobody wants that. And I sat down, getting home from my second job, and I cried. I couldn't afford to make a fruit salad and eat for the rest of the week. I didn't know what to do. It was my first year out of college, my first year making income for myself, and I didn't know what to do. I knew I had to get out of debt. These payments were ruining my life. But at that point in time, I wanted to go to that potluck. I wanted to see my friends, and I couldn't afford to make them a fruit salad. So what did I do? Well, instead of putting it on my credit card like I had been doing, I said I couldn't go. I had too much work to do. I'm so sorry. I would love to see you again, but I can't go. And to this day, that shames me. I didn't go because I couldn't afford to make a fruit salad. That's when it hit me. I needed to budget. I needed to learn how to get out of debt. I needed to do this thing so that I could live, so that I could see my friends, so that I didn't have this stress, this financial burden hanging over my head every second of every day, checking my bank account 2 or 3 times a day to make sure that I had enough to eat that week. So what does that have to do with you in this video? We have to prioritize. You have to figure out where you're going so that you can make a plan, a budget to get there. If you're in debt, part of your plan, part of your priorities are to get out of debt. If you don't have debt and you have upcoming expenses coming up, those are part of your priorities. You need to organize those priorities, create some real goals, see your vision so you know where you're going, so you can create a budget. Let's get into it. The very first thing you need to do is create a vision so you have an idea of where you're going. Then we'll get into prioritizing, and then we'll get into really putting together goals. I'll give you a framework for how to get to your vision that works for every one of my clients, and it certainly worked for me. At this point in my life, my husband and I are completely debt-free. We don't even have a mortgage. And if you look at me, I'm too young for that. I know this works. I know this works. That's why I'm here today. Let's get started. Where do you want to be in 20 years? Where do you want to be in 20 years? Now, for some of you, that's retired and living your retired dreams. Great. What does it look like? How do you want to retire? For others, it's maybe still working, but completely debt-free, not even a mortgage. For others, it's working their dream career, starting their own company and having their company flourish. I know that's my dream. For others, it's a little bit different. Hanging out with your grandchildren or your children as they get older. Whatever your dream is, write it down now. Where do you want your life to be? What do you want your life to look like in 20 years? My next question. What do you want your life to look like in 10 years? All right, we've subtracted a decade. 10 years from now, you're 10 years older, you're 10 years wiser. What would make your life successful 10 years from now? What do you want your finances to look like? What do you want your days to look like? Where do you want to work? What do you want to be doing? How do you want to spend your free time? What do you want to prioritize for 10 years down the line? Now, hopefully for a lot of you, debt-free, completely debt-free. I want to be debt-free in 10 years. That's where I was when I was 21, 22 years old. I wanted to be debt-free. Little did I know it took way less than 10 years to get there. Where do you want to be in 10 years? Do you want to have bought a house or fully funded your emergency fund, paid for your kids' college? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Do you want to have a vacation house? What do you want your life to look like? Where do you want to be financially in 10 years? Write it down now. Okay, 5 years. Let's go 5 years down the line. What do you want your life to look like in 5 years? Now, that's a lot sooner than a lot of people think. 5 years is not that long. My daughter's 5 years old. I can't believe it was over 5 years ago that she was born. What do you want your life to look like in 5 years? I know. I'll be taking my daughter on a trip to Paris. I've always dreamed of taking her abroad, taking her to Paris, showing her that there's a world beyond her front door, a world beyond our small town. Well, it's not that small. In 5 years, that's a lot more specific. I want to have a flourishing business. I know where I want to be in 5 years. I can see it. I can taste it. I can almost grasp it. Where do you want to be in 5 years? For a lot of you, again, debt-free. It takes a lot less time to become debt-free when you're focused. It takes a lot less time to have that emergency fund, to stop living paycheck to paycheck. When you're focused and you have a budget and you know where you're going and you have your priorities and you have a vision. Write down now where you want to be in 5 years. Last one for your vision. Where do you want to be in 2 years? Just 2. 2 years. 2 years is not that much time. For some who are maybe a little bit younger or who are a little bit older, 2 years might seem like a long time. 2 years, a lot can happen in 2 years. You know that, I know that. A lot can happen in 2 years, especially when you're focused and you know you can accomplish your goals. What do you want your life to look like in 2 years? Now, in this one, it's a little bit different. I want you to think about your ideal day. What does your ideal average day look like 2 years from now? How do you wake up? What do you do? Where do you spend your time? How stressed are you? What do you do for fun? How freeing is it to be where you are 2 years from now if you've accomplished your goals? What will your life look like 2 years from now if you have completed this program, if you've gotten on a budget, and you've accomplished your goals? What will your life look like? Write it down now. Where will you live? What will your family look like? What will you be doing? Give me your vision for 2 years down the line. Okay, that's your vision. You've written it down. You have 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, and 2 years. Now let's get into a framework that will serve you throughout your life. Savor Street Steps to Financial Security. These are based on Dave Ramsey's baby steps. I use them. I love Dave Ramsey's baby steps. But I live here in Boston, or right outside of Boston, Massachusetts. It is a high cost of living area, and I noticed as I was going through this with some of my clients that Dave Ramsey's baby steps haven't been updated since 2004. 2004! Inflation alone takes baby step number one from that $1,000 starter emergency fund to $2,000. So I've updated Dave Ramsey's baby steps, and now I call them Savor Street Steps to Financial Security. Let's get you to a financially secure place where you're not living paycheck to paycheck and following a budget. Let me show you how. Step number one is to save up a $2,000 starter emergency fund. Now, that starter emergency fund is for your whole family. It is not individual. It is not $2,000 per person. If you have 7 people, it's not a $14,000 starter emergency fund. It is a $2,000 starter emergency fund. This emergency fund is to allow you to not use credit cards, not use debt in case of emergency fund. Your catalytic converter goes, you have enough money in your starter emergency fund to make that repair on your car. Do you understand? It is a starter emergency fund. It is not your full emergency fund. That's step number 3. We'll get there in a moment. Step number 2, and you're doing these in order. Step number 1 first. Now step number 2 is to use the debt snowball to get out of all debt except for your mortgage. So a debt snowball is when you put your debt smallest to largest and you work them in that order. You pay the minimums on everything except for your smallest debt, and you knock that one out as fast as you can. I've used this debt snowball myself, and I used it for all, what was it, 18 or 21 of my student loans and my car loan. Used it myself to get out of debt. I've used it with all of my coaching clients who had debt to get out of debt. And whenever my coaching clients decided to go outside of the debt snowball method, they came back and said, now I understand why we're using the debt snowball. It is motivating. It uses human psychology. It gives us momentum, and it gets us there faster. Now, I will say some of my clients have tried the debt avalanche method, and it is hard to keep that momentum going. It doesn't motivate you to use the debt avalanche method. So, step number 2 is to use the debt snowball method. And I have blog articles and I have downloads for you that show you how to use the debt snowball method to get out of all debt except for your mortgage. All debt, including your student loans. I don't care if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loans, you need to knock those out quickly. Step number 3 is to save a 4 to 6 month emergency fund. That is 4 to 6 months of bare bones expenses. So expenses when you imagine you've lost your job and you need to trim your expenses as far down as they can go. That's your bare bones expenses. It's basically only covering your food, housing, transportation, and that's kind of it. So being able to live, survive, breathe, have a roof over your head and not go naked and, eat properly. I don't mean steak, but like eat at least enough to survive. Those are bare bones expenses, and that's how you calculate your 4 to 6 month emergency fund. Step number 3, you only do that when you're done with step numbers 1 and 2. So you're completely out of debt except for your mortgage. Then you can start step number 3. Okay? Step number 1, you use that starter emergency fund to jumpstart step number 3, your 4 to 6 months emergency fund. Okay, once you have that emergency fund, and I know I'm going fast, stay with me. Once you have that emergency fund, then you start step number 4, and that's to save 15 to 20%. And I give a range there for a reason. If you're in your 40s, it should be closer to 20% if you have no retirement income or savings. If you are younger, if you're in your 20s or early 30s, 15, 16, 17, 18% is good. You should calculate it out. Get a second opinion, make sure you're saving enough for your retirement, use some of those retirement calculators, figure it out yourself, or come to Saver Street and we'll help you figure it out. But it should be between 15 and 20% of your pre-tax income you're saving for retirement in those excellent retirement tax preferred, tax sheltered, basically, accounts that the government lets us use, like Roth IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, thrifts, TSPs, and whatnot. If you have pensions, that calculation's a little bit different, but not that different. Okay, so that's step number 4. Now, once you have that down and you are saving 15% or more, 15 to 20, for your retirement, then you move on to step number 5. Now you continue doing step number 4 while you move on to step number 5. Step number 5 is to save for your kids' college education. This one is a little bit, controversial. Some people won't save for their kids' college education. That's fine. Maybe your kids won't go to college. Some people like to save a lot for their kids' college education. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what your kids are going to do. I can't tell you any of that, but I will say that there is not really a downside to saving for your kids' college education unless it is taking from your retirement. And it shouldn't. If you're following these steps, it should not take from your retirement savings because you did that before this. You are doing that. It is a higher priority to save for your retirement than it is to save for your kids' college education. Okay? Step number 6, this one's also controversial, is to pay off your mortgage. Let that sink in. Can you imagine not having a mortgage? Now you'll still have property taxes and other things, insurance. But can you imagine not having a mortgage? I couldn't until I got there. Why is this controversial? Well, the math says it is better for you to put more into an investment account or brokerage or retirement accounts than to pay off your mortgage. And I get that. I get that argument. But I also understand that everyone has different levels of risk. I started a business. I didn't want the bank coming. I didn't want anybody coming and foreclosing on my house because my business bombed. I didn't want to risk our family's safety because something happened and I couldn't afford a mortgage. Now we have insurance, sure, but there's no insurance for a failing business. There's no insurance for losing your job. Right? Well, there's unemployment insurance, but that is hardly a guarantee and not as much as you make in your income. So I understand the hesitation to paying off a mortgage, but do you want to go into your retirement with a mortgage? Imagine what you could do if you didn't have that mortgage payment. Do you see how much life opens up when you don't have a mortgage? I hope so. Take a moment and think about it. Think about it. It might be a while if you're taking this course. You might be in debt. You might be saving for other things. You might just be starting out and learning how to budget. But think about what life would be like if you didn't have to pay rent or a mortgage. What could you do with that? For me, it's helping us with this business. For me, we're giving more money away. For us, we're able to give our kids the trips, the education, the classes that they want to take. Want to be a ballerina? Okay, let's go take that course. Let's enlist you in the, or not enlist. Let's sign you up for those classes. Imagine what it's like. How much more freedom you could have. It's up to you. This is your life. But if you're saving enough for retirement, that 15 to 20%, then why not pay off your house? What's going to happen? Do the math, do the calculations. So there's your framework. Oh, step number 7, I almost forgot. Step number 7, once you've paid off your mortgage, you're still saving for retirement, you're saving for your kids' college education. Step number 7 is to live free and give more. I'm assuming you're giving. A lot of people are givers. You just want to help. Step number 7, you have no more debt at all to your name and you can give more. I do that. I can't tell you how many people I coach for a nominal or free fee. I give. We give to our church. We give to missions. We give to help feed children all over the world. We give because we have the means to give now. We give because that's what my God called us to do. Step number 7 is when you can really bless others and give more. Now, you might not be a Christian like I am. That's okay. It still feels great to give. It is so fulfilling. Keep going. Let's learn how to budget. Okay. You have your framework. Those are the Saver Street steps to financial security. That is your priority order. Now, some things are not going to fit in there, like, what do? I want to save for a down payment on a home and moving costs. We also need to pay for daycare. We need to pay for a bunch of things. That's when you sit down and you organize your financial goals. Saving for a mortgage on a house, where does that fit in? Now, you can sit with a financial coach, you can go to group coaching, or you can sit down and talk to a trusted friend or your spouse. If you're married, it should be your spouse. To prioritize your goals. Goals need to be what I call SMART goals. That's an acronym I learned from the business world. It just means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So all that means is I have a worksheet. You can see specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals. Let's go. Let me explain all those. Time-bound, you give yourself a deadline. Save $15,000 for closing costs and moving costs on this house. That's not a down payment. That's just closing and moving costs, right? So let's, give yourself a deadline. When are you going to buy the house? November. Great. How many months is that? Okay. That is your deadline. November of this year. Save closing and moving costs $15,000 for that house. All right. Now that's specific. It's measurable. Measurable because it's $15,000. It's time bound because it's November. You know what it's for. It is specific. Closing and moving costs. Achievable? We need to get into the budget to figure that out. And is it relevant? Yes, it's a financial goal and it has to do with your life. It is relevant. That is an example of a SMART money goal. Okay. Write out your SMART money goals and then prioritize them. What do you need to do by when? Prioritize what comes before the next. What do I want so badly it hurts? Fit it in the framework. If you're not debt free yet, You should not be buying a house unless you already have one and you're going from house to house, okay? Make an exception there. I'm not going to tell you to sell your house if you're not debt free. That doesn't make sense necessarily, unless the house is too expensive. But that's a discussion for another time. So really go through your goals, which need to align to your vision. So your goals are based on where you want to be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years down the line. Your priorities need to be for your goals. Let me give you an example of how this works. And I'm thinking about a specific couple that I coach. All right. Now, they have a lot of competing priorities. They came to me because they had a lot of things they wanted to do, and they had no way to prioritize and figure out how to do them all. They wanted to do them all, and it's not out of reach to do them all. Let me tell you what they were. They had over $100,000 of credit card debt and needed to pay it off. Their average interest rate was 19 or 20%, so it was a lot. It was compiling a lot. All right. They had a leased vehicle, and which was expiring, so they needed to buy a car at the end of the year. They wanted to have another child, so they needed to afford daycare, and daycare around high cost of living areas like Washington, D.C. and San Francisco, California, and Boston, Massachusetts, and New York City is super expensive. It's thousands of dollars every month. So they wanted to have another baby, and they needed to be able to afford it. So that was a competing priority. And in order to house another child, they needed to go from their condo to a larger place. You can only have so many kids in a 600 square foot condo. And that number of kids is one for the most part. So, okay, we have all of these competing priorities. Oh, and throw in, I need to save for retirement. Throw in, I'd like to have a nice vacation with my family once a year. What do we do? What do we do? So we worked through the steps, Save or Street steps to financial security. Now, they had an emergency fund of $10,000. I think at the time it was 12. They had $12,000 emergency fund. That's bigger than the $2,000 starter emergency fund, and they had a ton of debt. So we put all that debt in a debt snowball. We worked through their budget to figure out what their bottom line was, what their income minus their expenses was, and believe it or not, they were over their bottom line every month. So they were in the negative. Okay. And we figured out how to get them into the positive. We took a bunch of their, what they consider their emergency fund, and we paid off some of their lowest debts. Now, I challenged them on one of the debts, one of the smaller ones. I think it was around $1,800 or $1,900. I challenged them to sell things around the house to get rid of that debt. That could only be funded through selling things. And they did it. So we worked through it. We were breaking some mentalities. We were breaking some mindsets and building better ones. We were getting rid of their debt. And then we worked through their priorities, and they prioritized it. Number one, get out of debt, get out of these payments forever, get rid of their student loans and their credit card debt and whatnot. Number two, and their second priority was second because it was time bound. They needed to sell their house and buy another one. Needed is a strong term, but they wanted to. They definitely wanted to. So they thought that they were going to buy move into a new place August or September. So we set a goal. Once they had finished and could prove to me that they could live on a budget for 2 months, we started saving in a sinking fund for their closing and moving costs. Their down payment would be paid for by the equity in their first place. So we put a goal, and they started saving for their closing and moving costs. That was priority number 2. Priority number 3 was to save up to buy a used car with cash. Now we didn't start priority number 3 until they had enough for their closing and moving costs. You can only do so much at a time. So that's why you need to prioritize. That's why you need to figure out what you can do, what your priorities are, so that you know what order to go in. The key to this is to make it simple. You want your financial goals to be simple. If it's not simple, it's going to be too complicated. You're not going to know what you're doing. You're not going to do it well. So simplify things. That's what priorities are for. That's what those goals are for. That's what this framework is for. Simplify it so that you can do it in order. You can actually accomplish it, and you can make the progress that you need to make in your financial life. Their next priority was to be able to afford daycare, which is a lot simpler when you're out of debt. So, priority number 1, getting out of debt, fed priority number 4. When you're not saving for closing and moving costs, when you're not saving for a car, it's much easier to afford daycare. Do you see how those priorities flowed through and helped them prioritize what they did in their budget? It changed their budget. That's why you need these goals. That's why you need priorities. That's why you need a framework, and that's why you need a vision. So go get started. I have activities that will help you get all these things done. Write your vision, write your real vision in those time frames. Together if you're married, and individually, by yourself if you are not. Then write your goals for your financial life, and prioritize them. In the next video, I will teach you how to put your budget all in one place on one sheet. In video number 3, you will learn how to track your budget in an automatic way or semi-automatic way. Very easy, making it very easy. And in video number 4, you will learn how to stay motivated. That is the hardest part, is stay motivated through these goals so that you can get to that vision. You can get to the life you want. The life so many people have learned to achieve and have gotten there. You can get there too. Let's get you there. I'll see you in the next video. I look forward to reading your homework. And hopefully I'll see you in that last live session where you submit your budget and I go through and I look at people's budgets together. This is a budgeting course after all. So what would it be if you didn't have examples from other people and you didn't see an expert's opinion on what budget should be? So I'll see you there, and I'll see you in the next video.